Alright, so for our first scenario here, we're going to start with the Marines assaulting the Orc boys. The assault phase is now broken into two separate phases of all its own. The first one is charging or declaring charges, and then the second one is actually fighting the assault. So before the Marines do anything at all, they are just going to say they are charging these boys. They don't move, they don't roll dice, they just declare the charge. The controller of the Orc boys then has a decision to make to overwatch or to not, and really it's not a decision at all. I don't know why they give you the option. Free shots is always better. So the Orc boys would then at this exact moment shoot the Marines, of course, at ballistic skill 1, so needing 6s to hit. And any casualties they cause would come from the front of the Marine player. So let's just say that the Orcs with their rockets and sluggas cause 2 wounds. The 2 very front Marines would then die. And after the resolve of the Overwatch, after all that's been taken care of, now the Marine player rolls his assault move. And if after the 2 Marines dead in the Overwatch, the Marine player is not in range, he does not make the assault. So the Orc player would just have gotten a free shot on him and the Marines would be left standing there. But I've set it up here, obviously I set this up beforehand, they're only 5 inches away. Of course an average assault is going to be 7 inches, so let's just say for this little bit here, the Marines make their charge and they charge in 7 inches. Alright, so now we're back and the Marines have charged. I'm sorry I don't have a bipod, so I can't like record all the moving and everything unless I'm get real shaky. But the Marines have charged forward their 7 inches into the Orc boys. 4 of them have made it into contact, and now the charge phase is over with. Now we're entering into the actual assault phase, or the actual fighting phase itself. Now this is where like one of the little tricks I was talking about comes in. The sergeant for the Marines is right there and in base contact the Orc boys, so he can issue a challenge. Now the Nob, who is in the very back here, the Power Claw, does not want to accept the challenge of the Marine here, because that Nob can mess up this Marine squad with his 3 Power Claw attacks, and the Marine Sergeant can instant kill his 2 wound Nob with that Power Fist. So we do not want the Nob fighting the Marine Sergeant, but the Marine Sergeant might want to commit suicide and go over there and fight the Nob. But in this setup here, he actually cannot challenge the Nob, because the challenges are done at the start of the assault phase, and you must challenge a unit that is engaged in combat. And in the definition, a unit that is engaged in combat is in base-to-base contact or within 2 inches of a unit that is in base-to-base contact, or a model rather that is in base-to-base contact. So as you can see, the Nob is in the back and he is not engaged with any of the models up front. So therefore the Power Fist Sergeant cannot challenge the Nob and cannot kill him that way. But anyway, so that's kind of a little trick there. Put your Nobs in the back or your Power Fist Sergeants in the back if you don't want them to get killed in a challenge. But anyway, so now in the fighting phase, the first thing that happens is the Marines actually make another move because they're higher initiative. You start at the highest initiative, which of course in this particular combat is the Marines, and you make a pile-in move. Anybody who's not engaged in combat gets a 3-inch pile-in to try to reach combat. So obviously this Marine would charge into there, and this one would charge into here, and then the Melty Gunner would charge down into here. This last Marine can't reach anybody, so he just has to try to get within 2 inches of a friendly model. So he'd move up there. And now you'd actually do the initiative for attacks after everybody has done their pile-in moves. And let's just say you kill this front line of boys. I'll be right back after I pull them out and I'll show you what the Orcs do in retaliation. So the Marines cause 6 wounds. Wounds are always taken from the front to the back. It's always the closest model to the furthest model. And in combat what that means is any model in base contact. So we had all that front row in base contact, so any of those models could be taken. If there were more wounds than there were models in base contact, that's when you have to start doing closest to closest. So we still have one guy up here who is still in base contact, so if we had 2 more wounds, that one would have died because he is still in base contact, and then you'd have to see who is the next closest to one of these Marines, which is probably like one of these 2 guys down here. It really wouldn't matter though, just pull one of these guys in the second row off, but anyway, so after it's base contact, then you go to the next closest and start moving on back. But we only killed 6 Orcs, so we pulled those ones off. And now you go to the next initiative step, which is the actual boys, because obviously the Power Fist Sergeant and the Nob are initiative 1. So now the boys, in their initiative step, actually get to pile in now, because obviously I did not react to combat, because you no longer get a pile in from the charge. You actually pile in at your initiative step. So now it's initiative 2 for the Orc boys, so they make their pile in move, and they'll get closer to combat. So now at the initiative 2 step, the Orc boys have piled in. Everybody gets a 3-inch move to try to get into base-to-base contact, or to try to get within 2 inches of somebody else who is in base-to-base contact. And as you can see, the initiative 1 Nob has not moved at all. He stayed in the back, and we had to leave one orc a little ways back. He's still within 2 inches, so he'll still get swings, but we had to maintain unit coherency there. But now all the orc boys get to swing, and they get to do however many wounds they're going to do to the Space Marines. I don't know math off the top of my head for that many orcs, but anyway, let's say they cause about 3 wounds to the Space Marines. The 3 Space Marines would then be removed. It would be anybody in this line in base-to-base contact, and not the guy in the back. He can't be removed as casualty because he's not in base if only 3 wounds are caused. And you can actually choose any of these models that are in base-to-base contact with those 3 wounds because all the armor values are the same. It gets more complicated once the armor values start changing. I'm going to do that demonstration here in just a minute. But because all the armor saves are 3-up armor saves, you can remove any of those guys in base-to-base contact. And then we go to Initiative 1, and now the Nob would make his 3-inch pile-in, which puts him within 2 inches of an orc boy. So he's considered in combat, and he can actually still attack. So he was out of combat for the challenge, so he did not get challenged by the sergeant, and the sergeant didn't kill him. And now in the actual end of the assault phase, he gets to pile in 3 inches into combat, so he actually gets his attacks, and he can kill hopefully more of these Space Marines than the Power Fist Sergeant can kill the orcs. Now if this combat goes on to another round, which it obviously will because orcs are fearless, then the Power Fist Sergeant will be able to challenge your Nob. You can really only avoid it for 1 turn because now the Nob is engaged. So now at the start of the next assault phase, if the Sergeant wishes to, like say he's losing, he's going to lose the assault, so he might as well kill your Nob while he's at it. You really can't avoid at that point. All you can do is decline and send your Nob to the back. But if you're down to like just a Sergeant or something left anyway, it's not a big deal to decline with a Nob. But anyway, so we'll pull some Marines out here and see what that looks like. Alright, so after all the boys attacked and the Nob attacks, we're down to 3 Space Marines left alive there in the middle. The orcs did lose combat though, but because of the changes to the Fearless rule, they just automatically passed the leadership check now. There's no more orcs dying in droves to Fearless saves. They just stand there and like it. So now we would do another consolidation move. So this guy would move 3 inches in, and then all these orcs down here would pile in onto him. So now you can see with only 3 Marines left alive, if that Power Fist Sergeant issues your Nob a challenge, it's not that big of a deal to decline it. Your Nob won't get to attack, but all of your boys will be fighting 3 Marines, and they'll probably still be fearless. So declining a challenge at this point isn't that big of a deal for the Nob. But anyway, that's the basics on an assault. I'll be back and I'll set up a different one and show you a couple things with characters and how they work. And yeah. Alright, so here we're back in. This time the orcs have charged the Marines. I'm not going to actually remove casualties in this time. This is just for a demonstration. But as you can see, there's a long pile of them there, and we're going to add in a Space Marine captain to the battle. In this case, he just has power armor, same as all these guys. So we'll say he charged, or he was standing here on the end, didn't charge. He was standing here on the end of the squad, and they got charged by these orcs. And the orcs do about 18 wounds, I think I have over here. 18 wounds to the squad on the charge. So let's just say that squad of Space Marines took 18 wounds from the orcs on the charge. Now you have an independent character in there, but unlike in last edition, he is just treated as a member of the squad. He is just another guy. And being as he's in power armor, you do not allocate wounds or do anything separately for him. They're all 3-up saves, so you just take all 18 of your dice, and you would just roll all 18 of them. And in this case, failed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 saves. 6 saves are failed. So you go into base-to-base contact, and you'd start, and you'd pull out any 6 guys who are in base-to-base contact. You couldn't pull the guys at the rear. You could, if you wanted to, pull the captain, but once you start wounding him, you have to finish wounding him. So you could pull out, say, 4 guys, and then put the 2 remaining wounds on the captain if you want. But if you start with a wound on the captain, he has to take the next 3. So it would kill him. So it's a bad idea. But that's if he has the same save as the squad. He has a 3-up save, and the squad has a 3-up save. It'd be everybody in base-to-base contact, and the captain counts as a member of the squad. He just has more wounds. So if you have a captain like that, it's a good idea to either keep him back, because he can actually attack from the second row. He only has to be engaged, so he only has to be within 2 inches. It's like the Nob over here. He's obviously in the back, because in his initiative 1 phase, he's going to pile in, and then get his swings anyway. The captain obviously is initiative 5, so he'll get a swing first, but you can put him back here in your unit for when you get charged. He gets his 3-inch pile in, he'll be within 2 inches and he'll get to swing, and then he won't be one of the guys in the front who gets killed when you take all those wounds. In this case, he wouldn't have been killed anyway because only 6 of the Marines would have died, but you know what I'm saying. If you take a bunch of wounds, it could be bad for the captain. Now, I'll do another one here real quick. If the captain's back up front here, and he has, say he's a captain with artificer armor, so he has a 2-up save. Now is when things get a little complicated. When you introduce a mixed armor save into the group, you got to do it a little differently. In the rulebook it says roll the dice one at a time, but then if you go to, there's a speed dice section, it speeds it up for you a little bit, makes it a little faster, because one at a time is ridiculous. So you obviously want to start with the Marines because you want to save your captain's life. You don't want to kill the captain. Say he has artificer armor and a relic blade, he's a bad man, you want to kill stuff with him. So what you do is you count your number of Marines who are in base-to-base contact in power armor. In this case, there's 7 of them. So you'd pull off 7 out of your 18 dice. So you have a wound pool, and that's all the wounds you've taken. You take 7 wounds out of it, and you roll those wounds. In this case, you lose 2 Space Marines. And you put all those wounds over there. And you pull your 2 Space Marines out. Then you only have 5 Space Marines left in base-to-base contact, so you can do the same thing again, but instead of pulling out 7 dice, this time you have 5 dice. And you do this until A, all of your Space Marines in base-to-base contact are dead, or until you've used up the wound pool. If you wouldn't use up the wound pool, your captain obviously is just fine. But if you kill all of your Marines in base-to-base contact, doing it this way, so you get down to like you only have 2 dice left and you roll your 2 and they both die, gets down to the captain, then you have to start taking 2-up saves on your captain. So that's kind of how mixed armor saves work in Assault, and how you can speed it up a little faster than doing just 1 dice at a time, because that's just crazy. So a few things I've learned real quick, not so much with these 2 armies. I was playing my Imperial Guard anyway. Yeah, you can't do too much with these. But in my Imperial Guard I have blob squads, and in my blob squad I have 4 sergeants in each squad, and I threw in a Commissar Lord on top of it. And he has a power fist, and he's obviously the best in close combat because the rest of them suck. So if there's ever a challenge, I don't want my Commissar to go back because I want him to attack, I can always accept one of my 4 sergeants because he's just a close combat weapon, las gun or las pistol sergeant in a guardsman squad. So you can accept with your crappy sergeants and keep, like, if this guy just had a bolt pistol close combat weapon sergeant instead of a power fist sergeant, you could, if the Nob challenge, you could just accept with him, have the Nob kill him off, and have your captain still swing. It seems kind of obvious with a Space Marine squad, but it works really well with guardsmen because you have so many sergeants in a blob squad. But anyway, that's just a kind of a gist of what I've gathered from it so far. It works fairly well once you get the hang of it. It flows really good. There's some neat tricks to be had with it about charging and independent characters. Mephiston can be a beast in close combat because if you don't position your Marines right and Mephiston gets on you, he can just challenge your sergeant every turn if you're in close combat with him. And either you can accept and he's going to kill your power fist and then the rest of your guys aren't going to be able to hurt him very well, or he'll send you to the back and then you can't attack him anyway. So things like that, monstrous creatures, they all really hurt sergeants. You got to position them just right. But anyway, that's a quick cap on assaults.